Over to Lebanon, where at least 10 people have been killed in Israeli strikes on Beirut's southern suburbs, a medical source has reported. The Israeli military said it launched a wave of strikes across Lebanon on Monday. The attacks targeted Hezbollah positions following rocket fire claimed by the Iran-backed group. Israel said the strikes were in response to Hezbollah's projectiles towards Israeli territory. The military confirmed operations are ongoing against the Hezbollah terrorist organization. We have further reactions coming in from the country. The Lebanese Prime Minister, Nawaf Salam, condemned rocket fire launched at Israel. He said the attacks are irresponsible and endanger Lebanon's security and safety. Salam warned such acts give Israel pretext to continue its strikes across Lebanon. Iran-backed Hezbollah claimed responsibility for launching rockets and drones at Israel overnight. The group said the attacks were in retaliation for the killing of Iran's supreme leader. Matthew, now 8 countries have been struck by Iran. Israel, of course, involved, the United States, and now Lebanon, a key point for fighting. Peace in the Middle East seems very, very far away. How do you expect the situation to develop in Lebanon and coming out of Lebanon in particular, and especially the actions of Hezbollah? Do you expect them to cause threat to Israel here?
Yeah, I don't know. I confess I don't know that much about Lebanon's situation. You might be better positioned to ask Professor Dwivedi. However, Israel does have, it's not Israel, sorry, Iran still has Hezbollah, their affiliates that they fund in Lebanon, and they are still in a position to attack Israel, America's foremost ally in the region, and they're still in a position to do some harm. There have been missiles fired at Israel. There have been other missiles that Iran has fired at 6 or 7 other countries in the Middle East, aiming at U.S. military installations. This was probably a huge a strategic blunder by Iran, because now most of those countries have turned against Iran and are doing what they can to support America's war effort against Iran. Particularly the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia was not happy that the U.S. military installation was attacked there, and the Crown Prince there had previously denied permission to U.S. forces to fly over Saudi airspace to carry out the attack that led to the death of Ali Khamenei. But now they said they're free to use Saudi airspace, and they're on board with the effort. So Iran is making new enemies all the time, and I think that a lot of the other countries in the Middle East were maybe in theory they were allies of Iran, but they've always been suspicious of Iran. And, I think a lot of them are secretly breathing a sigh of relief that Iran may finally be removed as a regional power there.
Major General Dwivedi, I want to come to you now, pose you that same question. Lebanon as a factor in this war. We know that Hezbollah is severely weakened following consistent Israeli strikes, even after the ceasefire on its alleged infrastructure in the south of Lebanon. Of course, that major operation by the Israelis back in 2024, blowing up the leadership's pages, of course, caused huge damage to the organization as well. What are the capabilities of Hezbollah still, and how do we expect them to act as this conflict continues?
Well, Thomas, as far as Iran is concerned, the 3 proxies, that is Hezbollah, Hamas, and Houthis, are the frontline soldiers, and they do all the dirty work for them in the region. And out of these, Hezbollah is the strongest because they have considerable rocket and missile capability, while they have been hammered quite a bit by the Israelis, but they still have the potential. And it's quite expected that when before Iran comes on the knees, Iran will exploit the potential of these three proxies. And it's quite expected that Hezbollah is now coming to the fray, and they have fired rockets on Israel to show solidarity with the Iranian regime. And so also I expect the Hamas, though have been very considerably weakened, but Houthis also may fire some, rockets and missiles, onto the Red Sea to show the world that they are still with the Iranian regime. So in nutshell, what I can say is that these three proxies are the extension of the Iranian so-called defense or the front line, and Hezbollah will do some bit of activities, but I don't think they are going to cause considerable damage to Israelis, because Israeli firstly defense very strong, and secondly the retaliation is always formidable. But nonetheless, these proxies will make some noise, make some kind of actions to show Iranian regime that they are with the regime in this hour of crisis. Thomas.
Indeed. Major General Gigi Davidi, of course, these regional proxies have been a key point of Iran's so-called axes of evil in the region, those being Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, as you mentioned. Are those really going to be an active participant in this war? What about Iran's military capabilities by itself? Of course, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard as well plays a huge part here. What more can you tell us?
Capability, we need to take in two spectrums. One is the aerial capability. They don't have any viable air force. Their air defense also is only moderate. All they have is the missile and the drone capability. They have about 3,000 missiles up their inventory or in their stores or in their kitty. But I think number of them have been fired. But more importantly is the missile launches. And that's what I think the Israelis and the Americans are going for. Once you take off the missile launches, then these missiles in these stores have no meaning. So therefore, that is the prime target for the Americans and the Israelis to take out as many launchers, as many missile sites as possible. And I think degradation is taking place day by day. And they're also going for the industrial capacity so that they cannot manufacture anymore. And more than that, any help coming from China and North Korea, in fact, our defense attention, both the countries, is very limited because now there's a total blockade. So I think in time to come, the Iranians would run out of their arsenal of missiles and drones, and therefore I think they would be compelled to come on the negotiation table. But one thing is the ground forces, which Iranians have tremendous capability. They have the Islamic Revolutionary Guards, which are about a lakh strong, and also they have about 500,000 forces, conventional forces, to obviate any boots on the ground by either Israel or by the Americans. So in nutshell, I can say as far as the aerial power is concerned, I think that Iranians have very modest aerial capability, and this is like to get degraded over a period of time. But on the ground, as far as the conventional forces are concerned, they have considerable capability. But I don't think either Americans or Israelis have any intention to put the boots on the ground. And the second point is these proxies. Well, they have been weakened. I don't think they'll make any tangible difference, but they can be of nuisance value. Nuisance value means firing on some civilian targets, doing some guerrilla type of operation. That I'm sure would have been factored both by the Americans and Israelis. But on the whole, I think as we compare to the capability of Americans and Israelis, the Iranian capability very modest and is not going to last for very many days. That's why President Trump has said that it could be over in the next 3 to 4 weeks. I think that's the time plan. And one more important thing, in the war aims that have been set by President Trump, degrading the proxies and also the ability of Iranians to support the proxies is one of the very prominent war aims. Thomas.
Indeed, and Matthew Vadum, this has been a huge talking point in the United States with a poll released today that only a quarter of Americans do support these ongoing strikes in Iran. Donald Trump, of course, launching his campaign on this premise that he is against foreign wars, a long-time critic of the Iraq War. How are you making what are you making of how Americans are reacting to this domestically? Marco Rubio is set to address the Senate today at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. How do you think he's going to be received?
Well, I'm surprised at that poll showing such little support. I wouldn't expect it to be overwhelming support because the last time, Iran was constantly in the news was 47 years ago when they took Americans hostage at the beginning of the Islamic revolution there. So it's not on the minds of the public, and they haven't been prepared for this fairly sudden action by the United States. So, it's not, I guess, altogether not unsurprising that they're not on board with it yet. But victories tend to have a way of turning public opinion around. Now, you ask what Secretary Marco Rubio is going to tell Congress. He's going to tell Congress and tell the American people that this effort is a limited military engagement, that it is aimed at regime change. President Trump, specifically in his address after the attacks, or maybe as they were ongoing, called upon the Iranian people to rise up and take back their government. I think that Secretary Rubio has to do a selling job with Congress and the American people and convince them that this is in America's self-interest, because the American public, well, like the voting public in any country, has a limited attention span. And if Iran hasn't constantly been in the news being portrayed as a threat, then people are not going to, then people are going to need some convincing before they hop aboard the war train, as it were. I think that there's also the concern that among the president's own supporters, the Make America Great Again movement, MAGA, that a lot of them are opposed to foreign wars. They are opposed to the nation building exercises that we saw in the George W. Bush years and in the George H.W. Bush years. And they're tired of wars, and they complain that President Trump has been getting America into plenty of wars in his second term after he vowed not to do so. I think what President Trump has done has been, for the most part, pretty sensible and justified, but, I'm not part of that movement. People probably still need to be convinced that President Trump is doing the right thing, and he has quite a task ahead of him.
Indeed. Do bear with us, gentlemen. We have some statements coming in from the Iranian Foreign Minister, Abbas